Ananya, can you please keep a check or keep a tab on the waiting room, and we will begin uh, right now. Just keep a check on the waiting room, Ananya. All right, so we can begin. Harsh, are we set? Good to go?
Sure. We can start.
Great. So we'll begin today's session. Our guest is here with us, and we have a decent number of participants as well attending the session. I'll just introduce Harsh to all of you who has had his share of accomplishes, and he's there to share his guidance with us and to help you all with the doubts and queries and anything you need to know about LAM Fellowship, and he's there to guide us. So Harsh has had a very illustrious bio. I'll just speak a speck of it. Harsh completed his BBA LLB from Symbiosis Law School, Noida, and thereafter he completed his master's in international law and legal studies from George Washington University. And he's currently a short-term consultant at the Department of Culture, Media, and Sports Ministry at the United Kingdom. Simultaneously, he is also pursuing his doctorate from Durham University, UK, and is researching facial recognition technology and the effect of emerging tech installed in the educational space in India. And he's also trying to locate Michael Foucault and the theory of panopticism in Indian modernity, which Harsh, I'm so sorry, you'll have to brief me on what panopticism is. I'm lacking in my research as well. So, he's trying to locate Michael Foucault and the theory of panopticism in Indian modernity, which intersects with issues of privacy, freedom of speech, power asymmetry, spatial power, and autonomy. And he was a LAM fellowship in the 2017-18 batch. So I'm sure with all of this, Harsh fits the bill perfectly to guide us on LAM fellowship. And before that, he's going to brief me about what panopticism is, and we're set to begin from there. All right, over to you, Harsh, sir.
Thank you, Rajnendra, for your interest, for my introduction and your interest in theory of panopticism. So Jeremy Bentham actually brought the concept of panopticon, on which Michael Foucault developed the concept and called it as panopticism. Now, panopticism, when he developed it, it's a concept way back in 1980s or 1970s. In his book Discipline and Punish, Michael Foucault published a book, Discipline and Punish. In that book, he brought out this concept. And in that, he constructed an architecture of a jail. And in a jail, he said that a jailer can see all the inmates of a jail, all the prisoners, all the inmates of a jail. But the inmates can't see that who is watching them. And therefore, there is a power asymmetry between the jailers and the inmates. So similarly, now place that concept in the sociology, the society in which we live in currently. So all these intermediaries like Facebook, Amazon, and all the intermediaries, Google and all, and plus the government can have all of the data, all of the personal data as well as non-personal data, as well as metadata of what we are searching, what we are seeing, what we want to buy, what we are eating, where we are living, etc. But we can't know that who exactly is watching. If someone is watching, who should we sue? Who would be accountable for? What is our grievance redressal mechanism? And of course, we don't have a personal data protection bill in our country, in India. And therefore, there are multiple issues along the lines of panopticism. So now I place this panopticism in an educational space in a classroom. And that is my research, that how I place it. Who all are the stakeholders involved in a school. It might be the principal, it might be the security guard, it might be the teachers, it might be, for example, recently a notification came in which the Home Ministry of India said that now citizens, like for example, Rajnendra, you can notify about me that I am posting something contrary to public order, morality, integrity of India, etc., and report it to the government. So this is kind of a citizen surveilling upon other citizens, which is called as lateral surveillance. So now there are different kinds apart from the government and the intermediaries. There are now citizens also which are creating a panopticon on other citizens. So these are so I take a stock of all the laws and policies which are there in education sector specifically, which are creating that amount of data in the education sector and how that panopticon is being created in the educational space. So that's my research, and on the basis of that, I'll be developing a legislative framework, sectoral legislative framework, which can help the future policymakers, that how to control that amount of data which comes from students.
I think that's very relevant in the times today, your research topic and what all we're going through, what all is happening. So, and I'm also informed by with a very interesting concept, and I would love to read more on this. And from the beginning only, with the backdrop which you've set for us, I am sure that we are going to have an amazing session, Harsh. So let's begin with our questions which we have for you, and we hope that all the students, everyone who is in the who's the participants in this session, I can guarantee you will benefit a lot from Harsh is going to say. And I don't know Harsh a lot, but from what he has just told me and told all of us, I can assure you that you guys are going to have an amazing session. So let's begin, Harsh. So my first question, as this entire session is about LAM Fellowship, and our entire audience is also excited to know about LAM Fellowship. So first of all, I would want you to very briefly tell us what fellowship is exactly, and then how the specifics of the LAM Fellowship program work. What can you tell us about the LAM Fellowship program?
Yeah, sure. So fellowship is very different from other things like research assistantship or scholarship and other things which are prevalent in India as well as in Western countries. So of course, like the fellowships came from Western countries. India has adopted them, and like in the form of Teach for India, for example. Teach for India started with Teach for America, and now it is Teach for India or Teach for China, etc. There are like these programs which are being carried out. Similarly, LAM Fellowship is also a phenomena which came from the Western world, and I'll tell you about it. But fellowship is in which you get an employment as well as a training on a specific subject or on a specific, in this case, on a specific policies which affect the government of that day, of that year, for example. Now, you, of course, get an employment for 12 months, that is 1 year. It starts from the monsoon session. So the year is not divided into 4 seasons, as we say, that is like spring, summer, autumn, and winter, but it is divided into 3 different seasons, which is like it starts from monsoon. In a LAM fellowship, it starts from monsoon, then there is a winter session, and then there is a budget session. The fellowship ends with the budget session. And that's the LAM Fellowship in total. But I'll, of course, elaborate on how the LAM Fellowship actually works.
Yeah.
So
I'll help you to elaborate on the LAM Fellowship with the questions ahead. So first of all, let's just begin with the eligibility criteria. If someone might be interested in the participants for the LAM Fellowship. So what exactly is the eligibility criteria on the basis of which these fellows are selected in the LAM Fellowship?
Sure. Yeah. Sure. It's a very basic eligibility process in a LAM fellowship. First of all, it's you have to either be a final year student as of in January of a particular year. For example, the fellowships, the application process for this year ended on 17th of January. So the first round of the LAM fellowship ended on 17th of January, and therefore, if somebody was in the final year, this final year of your respective graduation programs, can or could have applied. But if you are in your, for example, second last year of penultimate year of your graduation program, you can of course apply in next January. Or you can either be a working person, but should be of less than 25 years of age in order to be eligible for LAM fellowship. So this is a very interesting fellowship in which the age bracket generally is of 22 to 25 years, and you are exposed to a very mature democracy. By mature, I'm not saying that our Indian parliamentarians know everything, But I'm just telling you that this is so diverse country in which you are exposed to such diversifying dynamics of a society in the age of 22 to 25, that it's a very exciting fellowship, and I don't think there is any other fellowship which provides that.
Yeah,
And also within these 12 months of this fellowship, you can actually gauge the path as to where you want your life to to be, like maybe after 25 or after 30. So it can be, for me it was personally a point in which I thought I was never interested in politics, but I was interested in understanding the dynamics, as I said, of the society. And I think this fellowship helps you to gauge your future path at a very young age. And that's why I think this fellowship is a must. I think if like must to apply at least.
absolutely. I mean, I'm in complete agreement because at the age of 22 to 25, when you've just uh, specifically you just came out of law school, and after reading law and getting exposed to the democracy by the prime virtue of it, by in the parliament through the parliamentarians, that must be an experience,
Yep.
and no doubt about that.
Yep.
So I just have a follow-up question on the last question, which was the
Mhm.
eligibility criteria. And by the way, this is a very striking feature, 22 to 25, because most of the fellowships do not as such have an age limit, and they
That's
encourage
correct.
research. And because that's, I guess, LAMP fellows, I guess they are, the vision is to nurture the youth on the lines of, democratic governance. Maybe
Yep.
that's I didn't
Yep.
know that, but that's really interesting. So I want to know, with respect to the eligibility criteria, what exactly is the application procedure, and
Yep.
if someone wants to apply, what are the steps which he needs to take care of?
Yep. Fair enough. A very important point, and that's something like which starts from the first round itself, in which you of course have, there are certain minor details and certain major details which are asked. Minor details is of course your maybe your number, date of birth, email ID, and etc. But the major details are two, and that is your statement of purpose, and apart from that, a policy article, which is asked after, which is asked in the month of January. That is, which I said that 17th of January was the, I think 17th or 19th was the last date of this year's application process, and therefore these two things are asked. And after that, in the month of March, so your applications are vetted in the month of February by the current LAMP fellows. So because they are working on policy articles. On the policies which are undergoing, and generally I think all the applicants who apply for this LAMP fellowship, like for example many of you, many policy articles which came this year were around LAMP, were around farmers protest, were around environmental impact assessment notification, because these are some heated debates which were going on. And since the present LAMP fellows are much suited and are much into, for example, the budget session, into the bills which are being passed currently in the budget session. Therefore, they are given these policy articles to adjudge. And
Hmm.
after that, and the second round is in the month of March. It goes the entire month. There are around 2,500 to 3,000 applications in each year, and they select 50 to 55 people. And I'll come to that how they select. But the second process is, of course, the interview, in which the main criteria in the interview is the around your statement of purpose, what you have written in that. And I will come to that how you should write and what you should write, and that's of course we'll cover it. But your entire interview is based on your SOP as well as the policy article. So you can see that how important is that first round in which you have chosen a particular topic and have written around it, and more depth of the topic allows you to answer all the questions which are asked in the interview, followed up by certain questions in the domain of your political inclinations or your political ideologies. Of course they will grill you around, because of course you are working around legislators and not around bureaucracy or judiciary.
Yeah.
So this is one of the pillars of democracy, and you are working around parliamentarians who might be of a particular ideology, because of course they have to follow the
Hmm.
whip of the party. So whip is the person who
Hmm.
whip is of a particular political party who decides what should be the future stand of that particular party on a particular topic. So you have to have that no, I will not say political ideology, but at least a political awareness. So I often say that I think we are a mature democracy, but an immature electorate. Why? Because we tend to have those tea stall discussions. Amartya Sen says it as a deliberative democracy. We do a lot of deliberations, and each deliberation is around politics, no matter what. And especially after the advent of social media, it's like all around politics everywhere. And politics is not only about what Modi is doing and what Rahul Gandhi is doing. It's like everything shapes politics of a particular country, of a particular state, of a particular locality. So what topic you choose for your statement or for your policy article has is of great importance, because that will decide your interview, which way your interview will go. And that's why both the first round and the second round are intertwined to each other.
All right. All right. I'll just so this means that there are two steps, basically two stages. In the first stage, which matters a lot, we submit our statement of purpose and we write a policy article in which we give hints as to what our interests are, so that our prospective parliamentarian could gauge upon that and select the respective fellow whichever he needs. All right. So I mean, this is also
Just to add something. So parliamentarians don't select fellows. So there is a foundation called as PRS Legislative Research.
Okay, yes, PRS.
They run. So the idea is that in 2009 there were three parliamentarians: Kalikesh Singh Deo from Odisha, Jayant Chaudhary from Mathura. At that time he was MP from Mathura. And the third one is Anurag Singh Thakur, which happens to be the Minister of State in Finance.
Yeah.
So these three ministers actually went to US to meet John Kerry, and at that time John Kerry was Secretary of State. And when they went to US, and our parliamentarians also have these field visits and study visits. They go to different countries and understand that how this particular country is dealing with a particular law or a particular policy, be it education, be it healthcare, anything. So when they met John Kerry, they also saw how how each parliamentarian, be it from House of Representatives or be it from the Senate, has a research infrastructure. Each MP has a research infrastructure.
Yes.
Now, when they came back to India, they asked this to other parliamentarians also. They had something called as Bethak, and they asked that why we don't have a research infrastructure, at least for MPs. I'm not asking for MLAs, because of course we have so many just MPs only in Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha, let alone MLAs. So at that time, they selected 12 fellows on a pilot project in 2009. That was the foundation of this LAM Fellowship, the idea behind LAM Fellowship. And these ideas I'm telling you because if you resemble these ideas, you can talk about them in your interview as well. So, for example, I did my LAM Fellowship after George Washington University, where I did my LLM. So I used this as a starting point of my interview because I was truly excited to see how students in USA who are of 22 or 20 years of age are excited to do internships, not fellowship, but internships in Capitol Hill, which is the parliament of US. Why we as law students are not excited to work in parliament? Do we have something to work in parliament? Is there any avenue to work around parliament? So those were some of the questions which came to my mind when I was doing my master's at George Washington. When I came to know about this story from one of my seniors, who was from Symbiosis Noida itself, he was the first person who did LAM Fellowship from my university, and he told me about it. And then I got to know that, okay, this would be an eye-opening thing if I do. So when coming back to my story, when these three MPs came back to India, they asked PRS Legislative Research to start this as an institutionalized architecture. And then from 2010 onwards, 30, 40, and now 55 fellows are being selected. Now, when they are selected, of course, LAM fellows are selected, but PRS Legislative Research also selects the MPs. So there are like 545 members of parliament. You can't have 545 LAM fellows. you might have, but of course you need more resources for that. I mean, of course, PRS doesn't have so much resources. So they select 55 people, and MPs are selected on the basis of what bills they present, their past performance. So they have to be accountable towards PRS.
That's
If you go to PRS research site, PRS Legislative Research
Mhm.
website today, you will see that on each MP, you will have a statistical data on how much debates they have participated in, or what type of questions they have asked, what was their attendance in the parliament. That is also very paramount, like, because there are just 3 sessions, and if you're not coming in 3 sessions, that's pretty shameful. So what if they are part of certain parliamentary committees, what they spoke in those parliamentary committees, what they have done in their own constituencies in Uttar Pradesh, in West Bengal, etc. And all these on all these basis of all these performances, they are selected. And now PRS decides that which fellow will go to which particular MP. Because, for example, Asuddin Owaisi, let's take an example of Asuddin Owaisi from Hyderabad. Now, he is himself a lawyer. He knows law himself. So he won't require a person who has studied law because he knows. So he might require a fellow who would assist him in economics. So an economics person will go to Asuddin Owaisi or Shashi Tharoor, for example. I'm not saying, like, during my LAM fellowship, there was a lawyer who was given to Shashi Tharoor. But it depends upon the MP's demands also. So MP makes 2 or 3 demands every MP makes 2 or 3 demands. On the basis of that, a particular fellow is allotted on the basis of his CV or his past work experience and internship. So that's how the back end of the allotment of MPs and fellows works. So that's the idea behind it. So if anybody of you are thinking that, oh, I will work under Shashi Tharoor, I will choose Shashi Tharoor, you will not get Shashi Tharoor, first of all. Because of course Shashi Tharoor is a celebrated MP. He's much more a celebrity rather than a politician. Similarly, like Jyotiraj Scindia or Sachin Pilot or like people like this. But there are like go to PRS Legislative Research and you will hear the names of those MPs who are really very good in politics and working really hard for their constituencies around water issues. For example, there's Mr. Sushil Singh who has worked so much around water issues, but nobody knows about him because when I say that we are an immature electorate, we vote for the national MPs. We don't vote for our local constituents who represent us. Those MPs are doing for us. They represent 20 to 25 lakh people in an electorate. They don't have a choice that, okay, Rachnendra has voted for us, so we'll work for Rachnendra, but Harsh hasn't voted for us, so we won't work for Harsh. They have to work for both the people who have voted or who have not voted. So there's a electorate for which they have to work, and therefore you have to do your own research as to who all MPs are there and whom you want to work in future, but you don't have that in your hands. So that's the back end how that LAM fellowship actually works.
I actually had no clue that PRS was the one organization which was handling LAM fellowship. PRS, Harsh, isn't this a private organization? I'm not sure. PRS.
It's an NGO.
It's a not-for-profit private organization, right? Oh, so the PRS is having a very good engagement with the parliament now.
Yeah, they are doing since 2009.
Oh, wonderful. I used to read these bills which used to come. They have very good analysis of bills on PRS. That's how I came to.
It's a wonderful site for any lawyer or who wants to work in the legislative histories or around those concepts. So it's a very good site. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Acha, with respect to you, thank you for explaining the back end of how PRS is working. It will be beneficial for anyone who's interested in LAM fellowship because now you'll be more informed as to which and what directions you can take your steps in. When it comes to the application procedure, apart from, I'm sure every one of us know now that we have an SOP, we write an article in which we kind of let our opinions reflect our personality, and then we are selected and we are chosen. Apart from that, what would your tips be on what a perfect application looks like, on what parameters could be taken care of for your application to be perfect, for making sure that you will get selected in the fellowship program?
Sure. So yeah, so as we discussed in the last two questions, that what should be the what is the application procedure, and what all like you have to what all you have to submit in during LAM fellowship. So coming to the first point of the major details, which is the statement.
One, I would just like to add on to this question, my next
Yeah,
question,
sure,
because we are just, I want to sum up the application wala part.
sure,
Since my question was, is what are the nitty-gritties of for an application to be perfect? So the follow-up question on this was about to be that is any work on, is any previous work on policy making or internships in policy making necessary, and what, as per you, again repeating my question, would allow the application to stand out from the rest of the applications?
sure. Sure.
Hmm.
I'll cover both the questions. So coming to the major details part, and which is the statement of purpose. So when you are writing your statement of purpose, you have to specify exactly that why do you want to do LAM fellowship. This is also the first question which you will be asked in an interview. So I'm also simultaneously telling that what is the importance of your SOP in context of the interview.
By,
Uh, so
by the way, this is the most important part which you are going to take from this, from what Harsh is building the momentum. I could understand this will be very helpful for you, because now he is going to explain to you the entire application procedure and how you could, help yourself move up the ladder in the application procedure wise. Yes, I'm so sorry to intervene, Harsh.
thank
Please
you.
carry on.
No problem. Thank you, Rajneet.
Hmm.
So when you start writing your SOP, you have to write in the first paragraph itself that because you just get 500 words each for a policy article as well as SOP. So it's a very in very concise manner. You have to specify that why do you want to work for as a LAM fellow. So start from the, don't give an introduction or don't give fancy quotes, or don't start with your own background, because that you will be asked in your interview, or for that matter you are submitting your CV. So there is no point of repeating your CV in the SOP itself. That the intention behind asking both CV and SOP is that there should be a distinction between the two. There are different things which you can highlight from your life, and so when you are writing your SOP, start with the first note itself, that why do you want to work for as a LAM fellow. Now you can't write in that you want to crack UPSC, or you want to go into judiciary and therefore you are doing LAM fellowship. If you want to do a judiciary, become a judicial clerk maybe. If it helps or not, because I'm not from that background, but definitely LAM fellowship will not help you to crack judiciary exam, or for that matter UPSC exam. If you want to sit for UPSC, you might know that bureaucrats and politicians are always at loggerheads. Now you can say maybe that okay, I want to be a bureaucrat, so I'm understanding the working of a parliamentarian. But I'll come to the question of how, when you become a LAM fellow, and how your working is how your day is carved out as a LAM fellow during LAM fellowship. You will understand that there is very less time during sessions which is available for you to interact with your MP. And I'll tell you why. There are reasons for that and how to counter that. But you can't state that you want to become a district magistrate, or you want to become an IPS officer, and therefore you want to do your you want to work as a LAM fellow. Now, what you can write. So you should write your career progression. So there are short-term goals, there are medium-term goals, there are long-term goals. So bifurcate these three goals and write about them, that after LAM fellowship, during LAM fellowship, what you want to achieve, after 5 years, where you see yourself, and in the longer run of your life, what you want to become eventually. Now, for example, in the case of in my case, and I can understand that at the age of 21, you are still exploring, and you are, yeah, like I was exploring, and I was thinking like, I just want to do LAM fellowship because I want to understand how our democracy works. But that's a very good answer to write about if you elaborate on this particular notion, that why do you want to understand the society in general. Now, I wanted to understand. So there is no core. Now there are a number of courses in India provided by TIS or Azim Premji or other organizations, or other institutions which give courses around public policy. But during my time, there was like literally very few courses, and even if there were courses, there was not a variety of subjects which I could study. Now, I stated in my SOP that I want to study like, for example, I am a lawyer. I have studied law, but I want to understand the labor issues, the economic issues behind. So I took an example. I will quote that. I took an example that how, and you can actually quote this example in an SOP and explain why and what you want to study. So I will give you an example. So I stated that there is a particular issue of most of the employment which comes in India is from agriculture or from the manufacturing sector. Let's take the example of manufacturing sector in which automobiles are being manufactured and they are produced, of course, by laborers. But now technology is seeping in. These are coming in, be it artificial intelligence or blockchain, etc. And now they are displacing the laborers who are working in that particular sector. Now, what is the impact of that? Of course, as a lawyer, I would go on to see the labor laws, which I have studied. But a person who's coming from the sociological background, who has studied sociology and political science, will see this issue from a different angle. He or she will see the issue of the disputes between labor unions and the management staff. He or she will see this issue from the lens of unemployment in the country, which will create havoc in the society. From an angle of social security, from an issue of education and skilling of these laborers so that they can work alongside technology. An engineer will see this issue from that there should be an advent of technology because that will increase the manufacturing rate and we can maybe match China's scale of manufacturing. So every person will see this one issue from a different angle. And that is exactly my reason why I want to do my LAM fellowship, because LAM fellowship is the only fellowship which doesn't take people from a particular sector. Of course, law people have the greatest advantage. And if 50-55 people are being selected, 20 are lawyers at least, or from the law background. But once I get selected in LAM fellowship, I will interact with the heterogeneity of the people who are selected. Heterogeneous characters will come. For example, I can interact with the engineer. I can interact with for example, there was a girl I remember who was from psychology background, and she could tell me a lot about how social media works in general, how it plays with our psyche. And I never thought about that in my wildest dreams. I never thought about that. So those interactions, and maybe your own MP has studied something else. So the heterogeneity which this LAM fellowship provides you, from research angle, from policy angle, any angle, that is the purpose why I want to do LAM fellowship. So I explained it through example and came from an introduction to a conclusion. And I stitched together the introduction as well as the conclusion. That is very important. Because the idea you write in the introduction, you analyze in the body, and you conclude it. So it's a kind of an essay only which you are writing in a statement of purpose, but it's just that you create examples from your own life, from your own interests, and of course write it together in the statement of purpose. The second important aspect in SOP is, if you don't want to enter into active politics, why are you doing LAM fellowship? This is another question which you will be asked in interview. But also, if you can provide an answer in your SOP, that's great actually, because then at least on one particular question you will get enough marks in your interview. Now, there is something called as active politics. There is something called as passive politics. Active politics is, of course, for example, I don't want to enter, and maybe many of you won't want to enter at least now, and therefore you can't say in an interview, because then you will be, if you say that I want to enter active politics, then of course you will be asked a lot of questions around politics. So make sure that what you write in an SOP, because you will be grilled around that only. So for example, I said that I want to, I love politics. I love to read about politics. I love to read about how a particular sector works. Now, for example, recently, I think it's a news of 1 week back that China has claimed that there was a power outage in Maharashtra, and it was due to a malware which was installed by China last October. And all the power outage, all of the Maharashtra electricity was gone when India and China were fighting in Galwan Valley. Now, I am interested from a cybersecurity angle. I am interested from a both from technical as well as law angle, and so this is not politics. So why should I work as a LAM fellow? I'm not interested at all. So if I say these type of examples during interview, what will the interviewer perceive out of me? He will perceive out of me, oh, like he's not suitable for a LAM fellowship because these are some issues which are not related to politics at all. People vote on education, healthcare, and agriculture. People don't vote on cybersecurity. But that's the point. So, for example, in that during those times, I invoked that passion of technology within my MP, which is Derek O'Brien. I invoked in the interview also that I why I think that this particular issue is of importance. And you write in your policy article or in your SOP that even though I'm not interested in politics, but I'm interested in such issues which are important to national security, for example, your own country, for example. So invoke that passion about your country because you want to serve for your country. You want to do something, some public, for some good about your country, some public good about your country, and therefore you are a good candidate for this particular LAM fellowship.
Got it.
Now, the third pointer, which can possibly come in your SOP, is what you have studied specifically and how it relates to the policy article which you are going to write. Because these are the two documents which you submit, and I'll come to the policy article. But this is the last point of an SOP, which you can write is that it might be you have studied law. Within law, also you study like 40 subjects, maybe 40 different kinds of law. If you are studying, for example, BA, you are studying sociology, political science, you are studying economics, etc. There are various subjects which you study in a particular undergrad. Though we say that we have studied law, but within law also, I don't think that you like every law. You like tort law also, you like contract law also, you like constitutional. It's not possible. You like certain kinds of law and how you are passionate about that law. Because I'm sure if you are passionate about one issue, particular law, you will choose a policy, you will choose to write around that topic in your policy article. And therefore, you will be grilled only around that law. For example, you write around child sexual abuse or menstrual hygiene. Now, if you write about child sexual abuse, you need to be aware about not only the laws which are prevalent in India, but also what can be the possible recommendations which you can provide to your future legislators under whom you will work, or the organizations which will come to meet you while you are working as a LAM fellow. And therefore, you have to read child sexual abuse laws of various countries also, not only India. Therefore, you should deep dive into that subject to an extent that if you are grilled in an interview around one particular topic, which is child sexual abuse in your case, you can answer every bit of law, every bit of policy. So this, and similarly, I did. So now moving on to the policy article. So I specifically wrote around at that time. It was very much recent in news, and that was that Paris Climate Agreement was signed at that time. But I can't write on Paris Climate Agreement because it's a whole it's a huge agreement. There are so many parties which were involved in that, so many countries which were involved in that. I specifically chose to write on one specific part of Paris Climate Agreement, and that was on the sides of the Paris Agreement, there was a agreement which was bilateral agreement which was signed between India and France on International Solar Alliance. And that came out of the Paris Agreement itself. So I've connected Paris Agreement, but still I'm talking about something else. And therein I talked about what India can do, what India is doing around renewable sources of energy. So I narrowed my topic because if you narrow your topic, it is easy for you in an interview to answer the questions which will be asked in that area specifically. So ensure that you don't write on the whole bill. Don't write on farmers' protest as a whole, because there are three farm bills which are being protested. You can't write about each bill in 500 words. That's impossible. Maybe just write around MSP. Maybe this is just one part of these three farm bills. Maybe. The second thing which you need to ensure in the policy article is that you don't show your own ideologies and I request you don't show your ideologies throughout the LAM fellowship. Because if you show your inclination, if you show your ideology, the question which you should be ready to answer is that, for example, if you are writing against the present government, if an MP from a present government is allotted to you, how will you work with that particular MP in during LAM fellowship? For example, if you write about farm protest and you lash the government, lash the BJP government, the first question which will be asked out of that policy article is, if you are allotted, for example, a BJP MP, let's say Kiran Kher, how will you work under Kiran Kher? Because she is supporting these farm protests. You have written against farm protests. She will be speaking in favor of farm protests in the Lok Sabha. How will you draft a brief for her while working as a LAM fellow? You have an ideology. So you have to defend this question in the interview. So make sure that what you are writing in the policy article, don't show your inclination, don't show your ideology, no matter what you have in your heart.
You've got to be bureaucratic.
You have to be diplomatic. You have to be bureaucratic. And this summarizes the entire process as to how you would want to go. And these are some of the ideas which come to my mind. Of course, the ideas are also dependent on what topic you choose, that I can't state as of now. But these are the general broad comments around both the major things which are asked to you, which are, of course, the statement of purpose and the sample writing. Now, of course, to the last point we come, and that is the interview. Of course, as I said, never go with a biased mindset. That is, of course, there. But if some of you have already been selected this year for LAM fellowship, this might help you, because interviews have only started now, or they are scheduled to be during March time. So the second important point after that, you should not have been biased, and of course you should be well versed around your policy article topic. The second point is that follow all the political developments which have undergone in the last 6 months in the country. So, for example, if you are sitting for an interview this week or this month, you have to ensure that you know about Budget 2021, because that's the recent political development which is there, and budget is the biggest thing in a political year, biggest thing, because the government wants to come out in a manner in which it pleases the citizens, especially after pandemic and all. And the opposition is looking out for flaws in the budget. So this is the most important heated discussions which take place in the budget in any session is the budget session. Therefore, you have to, for example, I will give you an example that if you are writing around Paris Agreement only, I wrote around Paris Agreement. So I should be well versed with all the budget allocations done in the Environment Ministry at least. At least in that ministry, you have to be well versed. Apart from, of course, so for example, you have stated so much about Paris Agreement, but you don't know about a simple scheme which is being implemented all around the states, which is Nal Se Jal scheme.
Yeah.
Which is being implemented in every state now. So you are writing about environment, you are writing about international laws, you have gained education from whatnot college, and you don't know about a simple scheme which is being implemented in state or your own local constituency. And that's the thing which you should be passionate about. You have to know that what are the schemes which are new in this budget and which have been continued in this budget, both the things. So that's a very important point which you should know. Apart from what recent elections were conducted, what are the elections which are coming up? For example, West Bengal is coming up, Puducherry is coming up. So initially Puducherry was not coming up, but now the chief minister couldn't prove his majority in the floor, and therefore Puducherry elections are coming up now. Kerala elections are coming up now. Assam elections are coming.
You got to be aware about that.
Sorry.
No, please, sorry, carry on.
Okay. And also, for example, when I was giving the interview, Uttar Pradesh elections were conducted at that time, and I come from Uttar Pradesh. So it was definitely I expected this question that I will be asked about, not only about the election results, but also who who stood from your own constituency. That was Kanpur at that time. So who stood from, like, who was the who came first in from Kanpur, who came second, who was the opposition from Kanpur, etc., etc. So you have to know about your own local constituency as well if the elections are being conducted in that particular. For example, if somebody is going for an interview this year and doesn't know about the local politics of West Bengal and comes from West Bengal, so that's a definite no-no for an interview. You have to know about the local politics of your own state, not for the entire country, but at least know the bigger developments which are going around,
You
like
should be informed about the current happenings.
current happenings, basically the current affairs of politics. And last, of course, as I said, be thorough around SOP and your policy.
Everything you've written in your policy article and your SOP, and everything which is going on in the country and across the world, which is major development which is going on, you have to be informed about on those aspects as well for the interview. So your interview will be guided basically on your SOP and the policy article.
One thing around just the interview I would like to add is that there are two kinds of interview: one telephonic interview as well as in-person interview. Of course, these are COVID times, but I'm telling in general. Uh, don't think that if you are going for a telephonic interview, you will be at a disadvantageous position. I was selected through a telephonic interview. I was in USA at that time. So there was a time difference as well, but I was selected. It's on the basis of your knowledge. It's not on the basis of how you maybe, of course, your if you are in person, of course, you have to dress well, because in a parliament you have to be in your formal attire, and those things of course matter. But if it's a telephonic interview, the knowledge is the main thing, and if you are showcasing your knowledge, no matter what, you will be selected.
Absolutely. All right. It's actually my next question was centered around the interviewing process, but I guess you have covered it in entirety. What all now, every specific cannot obviously be covered, but the scheme of the interview, I guess we are very clear about how should we approach the interview, for the interview, that is stage 2, after we are done with our SOP and the policy article. That's been brilliantly addressed. Thank you so much. By the way, you just mentioned you're from UP and you're from Kanpur. Right now, I'm conducting this webinar and I'm sitting in Kanpur. So Kanpur is my
Oh my God,
town as well. A
what a
small world.
coincidence.
Uh, uh, my next question, Harsh, would be your. I actually had this question as well, which you already answered. That do these LAMP fellows have the option of selecting their parliaments or not? So that's not true. PRS is the one who's regulating all the affairs regarding the LAMP fellowship program.
But one question which you asked initially, I didn't answer, was that do you need work experience before for applying to LAMP fellowship? So there are 50 to 55 LAMP fellows, as I stated. Majority of the LAMP fellows are freshers. Majority of them are freshers, because they actually, for some majority of the fellows, LAMP fellowship is a stepping ground to do their master's degree from Yale, Columbia, etc., from Harvard, Oxford, etc. So they are freshers. They do this fellowship in between, and then they go for masters. I'll of course, there's we will answer that. What are the future things for which you can do after LAMP fellowship? But most of majority of them are freshers. But of course, there would be some 10 people maybe who have a background. Maybe they have already done their masters. Like in my case, I had already done my masters. Or if some have already are working in maybe in bank or a big corporate organization, or maybe have studied. Some people had for some people it was their second fellowship. They had done the YIF fellowship, Young India Fellowship from Ashoka University, and then they again worked with a particular MP. So they were like, of course, they were around 24 or 25 years of age. So it doesn't matter. The only thing which matters, I've already spoken around them in much detail. So just focus on those particular details. It doesn't matter whether you have a policy experience or not. I never interned in a policy organization throughout my 5 years of law school. In fact, I got to know about policy when I went to US, as I stated at the start also, that how I got to know. So but each experience which you gain, no matter whether you do a legal internship or a policy internship or maybe an internship in which you have to undergo an empirical project in a village around land acquisition. There are different types of internships. No matter which internship you do, you at least get certain soft skills, if not hard skills, at least some certain soft skills of how to uh, report to a particular your employer, your legal research skills, your drafting skills, etc., etc. So all those soft skills will come into play when you are writing your SOP or speaking in an interview. So just ensure that how you connect your internship experience in your SOP in the context of LAMP. So don't worry if you have not done a policy internship or not. So
All
that's
right. So, Harsh, as we have not much time left for the session, and I need to ask certain more important questions to you. One being, the first being that what kind of work were you supposed to do? What kind of work will you allocated when you were, pursuing this fellowship?
yeah. A
Hmm.
very important question because this will shape your interest whether you want to apply for LAM fellowship or not. So you need to know that what undergoes in a LAM fellowship. Although there are certain snippets available on YouTube, but of course they are not very well explained, or they're not like explained in entirety. There are certain snippets of what you need to do, but they're slightly old also of 2009. So that's problematic. So there are two types of work of a LAM fellow. One type of work is during sessions, and one is when there are no sessions. So as you know, there are three types of sessions. You start with a training program which goes in June. Once you are selected in April, so in March interview is done. In April you get selected, so you get a call back whether you are selected or not. And in June, around you can say 17 June, 20th June, you start your training program because the monsoon session I uh, starts around midweek of July. So you get a 1 month before the monsoon session, so you are trained. So now during that training program, that's the fascinating aspect of a fellowship. As I said, with employment you get education as well. So you get your salary for studying. So that's the best scenario.
What could be better?
What would be better than this? So you study about every aspect. So maybe, for example, some people are not well versed around constitution because they are not lawyers. So you study constitution, you study. So, but on the other hand, you are not an economist, so you don't know how to handle certain allocations which are done by center to state, on what grounds they are done, workings of a finance commission, workings of standing committees within the parliament, uh, certain issues of that particular year. For example, technology is a very important issue because data protection bill is laid before the parliament. So every MP is working around certain issues around technology. So there will be a particular session around that. And these sessions are taken by people. For example, I was taught about defense by a ex-RBI governor. So the sessions which are taken in during LAM fellowship are taken by even experts is a small word for them. They have worked for like 30, 40 years in that particular wing. So like, for example, that uh, a particular session on education sector was taught to us by the dean of at that time dean of Lady Shri Ram College, and she is a Padma Shri awardee also. So like these kind of people come and take like 2 hours 3 hours sessions on a particular sector, and that's why that training program is very, very important. Another example can be of I never knew that whenever a budget comes, there are three different kinds of budget which comes in a particular year. And I'll complicate maybe by explaining it over here because it's better explained on a blackboard, a kind of thing. But I'll just briefly tell you there's a 2021-22 budget which was of course released this year, but there's a 2020-21 revised budget which is also released this year,
Yeah,
and there
yeah.
is a 2019-20 actual budget which is also released this year. So there are three budgets of three preceding years which come. One is the budget of this year, one is the revised budget, and one is the actual budget. Now, of course, you can Google it. What's the difference between these three budgets? You will get to know. But of course, you will be trained during LAM
Achha, so
fellowship.
this particular year's budget, you mean to say this is prospective budget
It's
and
prospective budget,
the actual
revised
budget?
budget, and
Ah,
actual budget.
all right. This is
Yeah.
a new fact. I didn't know. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
there are three different kinds of budget which are released, and this was a very fascinating learning for me as to how to evaluate that particular budget, because if you see the entire corruption thing which keeps on emerging for every government, you can trace that corruption through budgets only. But nobody reads budget. Everyone reads short stories on Instagram, which can't tell you the entire spectrum of the budget allocation. So that's of course another thing. But sorry, if you can repeat the question, I forgot what I was speaking about.
I was actually asking, but what kind of work were you allocated?
Yeah, correct. So after that training, you are, of course, the monsoon session starts. In that monsoon session, you, of course, that's the first time you are meeting an MP, and you go at 9:30 in the morning to an MP's house, which is which is around Parliament only, in respectively Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, and you go to the respective houses during sessions. Each MP is in Delhi because they have to, of course, for their attendance purposes, of course. So you go to their houses, but you see that from 7 o'clock itself, you reached at 9:30 and you have no space to sit inside an MP's house, because since 7:30, there might be reporters, there might be sarpanch of some village in their own constituency, there might with their own constituency bringing certain requests. There might be people from civil society organizations who come to lobby. Of course, lobbying is illegal in India, but lobbying still goes inside the corridors of MPs' houses, and it is known to everyone. So you have literally no space. But in that moment in which there is no space, you can interact with so many people just at the outskirts of that MP's house, because there's a line, there's a queue. And generally, if you are in your formal attires and working on a laptop, each reporter will recognize you, journalist will recognize you that you are a LAM fellow. So that's a well recognized name in that circuit. Now the day, of course, starts with providing information around what bills will be passed in today's house, what questions, if there are certain questions which are being asked by that MP, you have to research around supplementary questions. So each question is asked by your MP to the government MP, so for example, you have a question on agriculture, you ask that question to an agriculture minister directly. Now, when you are asking that question to the agricultural ministry during question hour, there's a question hour in the parliament, you also have to ask two supplementary questions. That's a choice of your MP. So you can provide those supplementary questions to your MP, and if your MP asks good questions, not only your MP stand within the political party, but also within the entire parliament. Like he stands up in the entire parliament. For example, recently a Ladakhi MP made a firing speech. Mr. Jamyang made a firing speech when revocation of Article 370 was done, and he was from BJP. So he was in support of revocation of Article 370 and from Ladakh, and he made a firing speech, and he is now well known with MPs. So that impact you can give to your MP through your own research, through your own drafting. That these type of things happen during the parliament session. But between parliament sessions, first thing is that you prepare for the next session. The second thing is you are allowed to go. Different MPs invite you. So, for example, I went to Hyderabad to meet Asuddin Owaisi. I went. Like 15-20 lamps, of course, are chosen to go to each MP's residence, their own constituency, see how that constituency level work is conducted. So, for example, I went to Hyderabad to see how a day in the life of an MP is, how he interacts with his electorate, how he interacts with his people, how he undergoes. Of course, the best part is that you get to try a lot of cuisines, from Mughlai to continental to everything. That is, of course, during parliament session, as well as every MP has their own cooks. So you can definitely order something for you and you can eat every day. So make sure that you go at 7 o'clock in the morning and come out at 11 o'clock so that you can have breakfast to dinner. But apart from that, that's the fascinating part. But I went to Sharad Pawar's constituency in Baramati. I went to ND Pai's constituency in Arunachal Pradesh. Jyotiraj Scindia in Guna. Derek O'Brien is, of course, my own MP. So, of course, I never went to West Bengal, but there was an offer to meet Mamta Banerjee, but Mamta Banerjee was busy, so we couldn't go. But these are fascinating things which can come up in a particular year. to meet different MPs. So that is, of course, a learning in which you do not only see the central level functioning of MPs, but also the local level functioning of MPs with the municipal corporations for that matter. Like garbage issues, sewage issues, road issues are not conducted by Derek O'Brien as an MP. They are conducted by municipal corporations of that particular constituency. So what we learn in the law, that things start from panchayat level to block level to tehsil level to etc., to district, state, and central level, that you can see with your own eyes, and that's such a great avenue which Lamb Fellowship provides you.
This fellowship is actually can be very helpful for someone who's actually interested in this sector, because the exposure you get right from the ground level till the parliament, and the person who's routing this exposure to you is the parliamentarian himself. So the level of knowledge and the level of and the number of people who are experts in every their sectoral areas, this is actually overwhelming. It's a great exposure for someone who's actually interested in governance or policy making or rural development. And there's a lot of plethora of options which might be opened up. Because the exposure you get is brilliant. In fact, this also gets me to my next question, which is that once you are done, once you have accumulated so much within 1 year, once you've had knowledge of Mughlai to continental and everything, then what all are the avenues which are available for a fellow after Lamb Fellowship?
So of course, as I stated in the past also, that one of the things is that people often go to pursue their master's study, because in master's studies, one thing is very important, that it is of 1 or either 2 years. In UK, it's of generally 1 year. In US, it's generally of 2 years. And of course, in Europe, it's also of 1 year. Australia, I'm not aware. I've not researched in Australia, so I don't know. But generally, it's of 1 or 2 years. So you have to be very, very sure in which subject you want to do your master's, and within that subject, which subjects would you choose to study. It will not be of course, in foreign, not unlike India, you have to choose your subjects within a particular master's program. Some subjects are compulsory, of course, which are foundational courses toward your master's degree. But when you go to your second semester or third semester, fourth semester, if it's a 2-year study, then you have to choose your subjects, what you want to study. That choosing of subject comes from your own experience of what you want to study, or what you have done in your Lamb Fellowship, or what you have done. For many students, it's the first work experience. Lamb Fellowship is the first working experience. So therefore, that fellowship can serve you can give you a good mindset to choose your subjects. But it can, so for example, I will tell you my experience, and I believe that many of you would be studying law. So I will give you from that angle an idea that I went to study international law. I studied, of course, in the first semester, I studied all the foundational concepts of international law, international human rights, international trade, etc. Studied all the possible international concepts. But in the second semester, I chose the subject which I wanted to study. And those were climate change law, which I will never study in India. National security law. National security, we read as an exception to freedom of speech. There's a whole law out of that, national security law. I studied trade and sustainable development, which is, I never heard about this subject. So in which you integrate in trade with climate, trade or environment, you can say. And I studied a fascinating subject out of that. I created a thesis. In fact, I wrote a thesis on trade and sustainable development during my master's. So these were some fascinating subjects which I got to study, which were only possible. Of course, I did my Lamb Fellowship after my George Washington, after my LLM, but I was researching about Lamb Fellowship, and for that I read a lot of being implemented both in US and India. So the more you research, Lamb Fellowship, of course, gives you an avenue to research more new, as Rachleen was saying, rural development and other topics which you get to know, and that will provide you to choose your subjects in a better manner. And of course, you will get good recommendation letters from parliamentarians. So that's, of course, an advantage. And not only your parliamentarians, but there is a research. Generally, good MPs have more people working in that research division within an MP. So there will be certain experienced people which will be working alongside a Lamb Fellow in an office. So you can get recommendation letters from them also, not only an MP. That is of course one. Second is India is seeing currently a growth in number of NGOs and think tanks,
Okay.
growth in generally civil society organizations. So
Yeah.
for each issue, there is a civil society organization now working.
Hmm.
And therefore, and it, as I said at the start also, this is an Western inclination which India is now having. For each issue, in 2011 when I started law, there were minuscule of civil society organizations, and now like there are so many organizations in which you can work. So that's a second avenue where you can go. For example, you can work with Population Foundation of India if you want to work around population issues. There are certain gender-related organizations. There are, if you want to work core around research and policy, you have Center for Policy Research. I wanted to work around technology, so there's Center for Internet and Society. If you want to work around natural resources, there is World Resources Institute in India. There's Amnesty is now closed, but there was Amnesty. There's Human Rights Watch. There's Commonwealth Human Studies. There's so many organizations which are working. So these can be the possible organizations. If you are a lawyer and want to join a law firm after LAM fellowship, each law firm now has a policy division. For example, Amar Chand recently started an AI division, artificial intelligence division. All the laws related with artificial intelligence, because government is increasing the use of technologies, and Amar Chand now have thought about this and have started a separate division on all. Corporate wings in a law firms have policy divisions. Each ministry have policy divisions. Ministry of Education, Ministry of Human Resource Development, everything. So when you are working inside Parliament, you will get to know about so many vacancies you have no idea about, because there's a section inside the Parliament. When you go inside the Parliament, first of all, that at the age of 22 to 23, you are inside the Parliament. That's of course something like you want to see it with your own eyes, and it's really not the architecture, but the functioning of the Parliament, which is there in an institutionalized manner. That is something else. This you see, whatever you read about Modi, Amit Shah, Rahul Gandhi, Asuddin Owaisi, that is on screen. So just like actors have their personality on screen and off screen, similarly MPs also have their characters on screen and off screen. You don't have an idea that how good friends are there, like across this policy or across the political organizations, across the party lines.
Oh.
On screen we see that, oh, Sambit Patra is shouting and like on Republic Now and on India Today, but you don't know Sambit Patra in his own life. Jyotiraj Scindia is a celebrity, but what he does, or how prolific he is a speaker, what he reads, what he listens to, how he is a prolific speaker, you do not have any idea. So those all things LAM Fellowship provides you, and through that you can of course. And I was saying that Parliament has a particular place in which all the vacancies are like there's a notification corner basically. So you'll get to know about all the vacancies and all in the specifically government side. And of course, apart from that, law firm, as I told, masters, as I told, there's a number of avenues which you will explore during the LAM fellowship.
Right, but I guess it's most about the experience, the level and the expertise of experience you have. You can go into any field now.
True.
One very, I think you based on teaching. One could go into teaching after LAM fellowship as well. After, of course, after the masters, you pointed it out.
Yeah, I am a doctorate. I am doing doctorate. I want to.
Yeah, actually, yeah. So is LAMP must be having a good impact on your doctorate as well.
Yeah, as you said, that there's an experience which counts, and during my PhD, I just have just in simple terms, if I want to say, I have enough confidence to speak to people. Yeah. Because if you talk to such experienced people like parliamentarians or the people who come for lobbying with your parliamentarian, they are experienced. So you can make so much contacts and you can talk to so many people. And when you show in your CV that you have worked with a parliamentarian, what you have worked specifically, that can take you places. That just what we study in Article 21 of the Constitution, it gives a sense of dignity. It gives a sense of liberty to you to talk about certain issues, and a sense of polity also. Polity, what is going in. For example, when I like interact with in the parties or in the hangouts which I have with my friends, the most everyone talks about politics or sports. And when you have a confidence in you that you can speak about politics in a neutral manner, not in a biased manner, in a neutral manner, that gives a sense of pride to you.
That's a treat nowadays.
That's a treat, yeah. Nobody talks in a neutral manner. So that gives a sense of confidence to you.
That's
it's
also,
just, and as you said, it's an experience in life that you should take.
That's also an important takeaway for anyone who's interested in this, that you got to have that political neutrality. I guess Harsh has addressed that political neutrality point a couple of times now, but you got to be politically neutral. And in the environment which we are living today, where politics is heavily charging because of the mobile phones, and so it's all very charged, to remain neutral in such a charged atmosphere is actually a task. So my last question to you, and I'm seeking it for the benefit of all my students now, what's your, as you are doing professionally very well in your life, and you have taken all the right steps, which I think all of those pointers makes to seem to be connected and making sense now. So on that backdrop, what's your advice for your fellow law students today?
I would say that when I was taking those steps, I didn't know that those were the right steps. There is a sense of insecurity which comes with taking these steps. When I came back, even though I got a scholarship in US to study in US, still I spend a lot of money of my parents. I come from a middle class family, and you have a financial insecurity, sense of that insecurity, and that's very uh, very
Compelling.
relevant, very relevant to keep in your mind. And apart from that, of course, if you see your fellow mates working in big law firms at the start of your when you are like spending loads of money, then of your parents, then you have that kind of a jealousy also. No matter whether you accept it or not, you have a sense of insecurity as well as jealousy. But as I said when I was discussing the statement of purpose also, if you have in your mind, if you think that you have those immediate goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals, just keep in mind that whatever you are working on is towards those bigger goals. Even if you don't have those bigger goals, even if you have those short-term goals, which which you think that if I, for example, when I did my LAM fellowship, I came back from USA, and it's just a 20,000 stipend. You can live in Delhi, maybe you can live in Delhi, but at your own, but it's not a lavish salary which you are getting. And of course, after an LLM, you are getting just 20,000 rupees. That's a sense of pride which you can't see in yourself, and that I saw also. So it was not an easy decision to take. I had to fight with my parents as well to undergo this fellowship. But now when I am here at Durham University, my parents also think that I took a right decision. Rajnendra also thinks that I took a right decision, but it's not. But when you are thinking in your empty space, you don't think that it's a nice decision. But these sessions, I think, which are conducted serve as an inspiration for you students that uh, you have to take risks in your life in general. I can't end this particular session with a good note. It depends upon how you see it. That you have to take risks in your life, and if you are passionate, if you want to try something new, this is a perfect time to take those risks. Because after 25, of course, you will have those marriage issues, all those issues which the society imposes on you. And I will be 27 soon, so I can tell you that. But you guys are 21, 22, and I can certainly say that this is a perfect time to take those risks. Uh, uh, of course, if you have a support with your family, financially also, emotionally also. I will not compel you to do a 20,000 fellowship if you are not financially that stable. Maybe you can be financially stable and then undergo this fellowship at the age of 25. That is also a possible thing. in fact, I will also tell you, in fact, I will take this opportunity to tell that if you are not financially stable for say, or emotionally stable at this particular point, and you need really money at this particular moment because you have undergone an undergraduate program, LAM Fellowship provides this opportunity till 25, but there is a Swaniti initiative, SWANITI, Swaniti initiative, which is not exactly the same like LAM Fellowship. Of course, LAM Fellowship is much better, but Swaniti initiative can also provide a similar, not an identical, but a similar kind of fellowship uh, to people who are above 25. I'm not well versed with the eligibility criteria, but that's a starting point for you to research at least. So Swanati initiative you can research, but I will say try something new, because of course in legal market, as legal is the only market which is not liberalized. No outside company can come in India and start their own venture. So there are of course limited slots. There are so many law students, and that was in my mind also what to study new. So I studied new concepts in US. I did my the one question which I always had in my mind is what extra skill I can add to my skill set or the already existing skill set. Can be in the form of a language also. It can be if you want to study in if you want to maybe work in UN, because I was a fan of Shashi Tharoor, so I like always traced back that at that time I was a fan of Shashi Tharoor, so I always traced back that what language I studied, what skill he possesses. I also wanted to become an IFS officer, so but I can't study, I can't do rote learning a lot, so I decided not to pursue that. So but these, at least a thought of IFS officer inculcated in me to learn about a different language. So just keep adding till the time you are adding new skills to your already existing skill set. I think that job is meant for you, no matter what anyone says. So that's and each, if you are studying, maybe if you're in first year, second year, third year, even in your second and third years also, you can just keep adding skill set, keep adding knowledge domains, keep reading about other domains in which you are not interested also. For example, I'm not interested in corporate law, but still I study to understand the basic issues, what like just about, like for example, corporate social responsibility. That's something which is not entirely corporate, or around tax issues. My brother asked me a few days back what's the difference between tax and assess. So I could at least tell this basic concept. When you see a hotel restaurant and you see a Krishi Kalyan cess on that, you ently understand what's the why it is being charged to you. So these are simple concepts. Just keep adding your skills, and ultimately, in one or the other interview, this will come across to the interview, and you will be selected in that. That's the basic funda.
So summarily, you made a point which I have a poster in my room, not this room, the other room, in which I have a poster which Steve Jobs ka quote hai wo, in which he says you keep on doing things and you will not realize what it is meant to be, how it is meant to be, how will it benefit you, but over the years all the dots will be connected. So as your qualifier in this was, as long as you are cultivating your skills, you are in good spot, and then all the dots will be connected. At the
For
present
sure.
you might not know what you are venturing into and all of that, but it will make sense. Great advice and a fantastic session I've had with you. I'm sure all the students have been benefited a lot. uh, Great to know about Lamb Fellowship from such a knowledgeable and experienced speaker. Absolutely true. Gained a lot of interest and, of course, a zeal trying this fellowship. Thank you, Mr. Harsh, and thank you, Ma'am Pandit. So, thank you so much, Dhruv, for such a polite comment. And I would like to, thank Harsh for being here with us and for helping all the students with all your knowledge, with all what you know. And that's it. We can now, I guess, end the session. And this session will also be updated on YouTube, Harsh. So we'll update you whenever we upload the session on YouTube.
Sure.
And this session would not be just a random snippet of about Lamb Fellowship as you were mentioning about. So I hope students will be informed about Lamb
Yeah.
Fellowship after this session.
Yeah. Well,
Uh,
thank you, Rajnendra. Thank you, Manav, who contacted from Memo Pandits for the first
yeah,
time. Ananya later on, for inviting me to this session and like gracing this again.
we're
Thank you.
really grateful for you to be here, Harsh. Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
guess we can end it. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, all the participants, thank you so much for being here. I hope you really had a good time and a knowledgeable session. All right. See you. Thank you so much.
Bye, Rajneen. See you soon. Bye.
See you, Harsh. Bye-bye.
Bye.